and welcome to LaRosa Reads. I'm Denise LaRosa, and I am going to be diving into that list. You know what list I'm talking about. The New York Times best books of the 21st century so far. Let's talk books. So this has been much talked about in the bookish community, and I am talking about the New York Times 100 best books that have come out in the 21st century thus far. We are talking about the first 25 years of the 21st century, and some people were already complaining about this list because they were like, the century's not over yet. But come on now, will any of us be around by the century's end? Probably not. So that is why the New York Times has decided to dive into this list to begin the journey of the best books of the 21st century after the first 25 years of the century. I get it, New York Times. I get it. So how did this list come about? Well, according to New York Times itself, they had about, I forget how many, but a nice hefty amount of people that they termed as luminaries in the book community. Some people are debating on whether those folks are indeed luminaries, because we have folks such as Jenna Bush Hager. And look, she's a book lover. Is she a book luminary? Some say no. We also have authors such as Stephen King, Honoré Fanon Jeffers, who is responsible for the love songs of W.E.B. Du Bois, and so on and so forth. Despite how you feel about those people who were selected, the point is those people submitted a ballad, if you will, of their top 10 favorite books of the 21st century. And I shouldn't say their top 10 favorite. These are the best books that they believe came out in the 21st century so far. And you will see with my own list that I created, these aren't necessarily my favorite books. Some of them intersect with being my favorite books, my personal favorites, but some of them aren't necessarily my favorite books, but they are, in my opinion, the best books to have come out in the 21st century for this reason. For me personally, this list should be about, or it is about for me, books that are a reflection of our time. Books that did one of two things for your girl. Either they helped me to discover new things about myself, or to see myself in a new way, or to better understand myself. Or these books helped me to be more empathetic and understanding of others' lived experiences, others' stories or journeys or narratives. And so for that reason, I have selected the following 10 books that you will see on the screen. Some of these books I have discussed on LaRosa Reads, and others I haven't really discussed in depth. The point being is these are books that I feel have changed me, have transformed me, not as just as a reader, right? But as a human being in society, a fellow citizen, a resident of this earth, this world, beyond the United States even. Like, these books have had such a deep impact on me that I feel will never leave. They're living rent-free in my mind. As I look at this list, it's hard for me to do a top 10, like 10 and then going to number 1 being the best books. So when you look at this list, please don't think that I'm feeling like any of them are in the top. But I have to tell you, if I were to create an order, Homegoing by Yaa Gyasi has to be number 1 or number 2. The way she uncovered and took us on the journey of the beginnings of enslavement and followed 2 sisters and how they both had 2 very different outcomes from the slave trade, and how their generations following them were impacted by their journeys, was just so beyond transformative for me. And the ending is like, mwah, chef's kiss, powerful and real and tangible, right? For me as a Black woman, it wasn't too far-fetched, that ending. And so I just have to tell you guys, I started reading, well, I read this book before I became a booktuber, And it is one that I will forever be grateful for. It's truly a gift to readers. Two of the books hail from Pittsburgh. The stories are in Pittsburgh. We have an Unspeakable Hope by Leon Ford. I just have to give him all my love because I have so much respect, appreciation, and love for him as a person who I have met, who has contributed to wonderful conversations at the school where I work. I invited him to speak at our annual student-led conference, Culture Jam, and he just imparted so many words of wisdom upon the student attendees and the faculty who were present as well. This is a man who, in 2012, was shot by a Pittsburgh police officer, and it was a mistaken identity situation. This encounter has left him paralyzed and forever changed as a person, not just physically, but most importantly, just emotionally, spiritually, mentally. It's something that I will never forget reading those pages that he adds to the greater conversation of police brutality and race relations in America. And his offering to us, his stance, his philosophy is one that I don't hear enough about in society or in the media, if you will. It's a little different than Black Lives Matter and some of the philosophical stances that people have. And I think it's a voice worth listening to. And I'm pretty aligned with him. No, I am totally aligned with him in his view. American Sirens, you guys, it was my number one favorite book of 2023. If you want to learn more about it, check out my favorite reads of 2023 video. I just spill all the tea on it. It is amazing. Not too many fiction reads showed up on my list, and that's okay. I think nonfiction lends itself more to being a transformative read, but we have the Song of Achilles, which wrecked me in the best way for a reader. I'm telling you, I couldn't even open a book for like a good 2 days after reading that. Please check out my favorite reads of 2022 video because it was my number one favorite read that year if you want to learn more of my thoughts on that book. The House of Eve has two interesting perspectives on women's bodies and maternal health and just conceiving and giving birth to children. It is powerful. I just love it. I also spoke about this book in another video that you can check out, and that video is about the NAACP Image Awards that had nominees for fiction works. One book on this list I have yet to talk about on LaRosa Reads, but stay tuned. Lula Dean's Little Library of Banned Books is a recent read that I will be chatting about soon. And I am so excited to share that with you guys soon. As I said soon a lot, so it's coming soon. So out of this list, what books have I already read? Interestingly enough, I have read only 6 books that appeared on this top 100 list of the best books of the 21st century, and I'm okay with that. I don't feel any shame with that whatsoever. Some people on Bookstagram were a little snooty about it, bragging about reading 50 plus, and good for you. Other people were saying if you haven't read any books on this list, you are not a well-read reader. Whatever. That's not the point of this list, right? The point is to spark conversation and get you reading some books that maybe you haven't already, or to get you to reflect upon books you've already read. And the 6 books that I read had interesting reviews for me. I read An American Marriage years and years ago. I believe the year it was published. And I gave that book 4 stars. I felt like it was much hyped, and I wasn't necessarily in agreement with just how much hype it got. However, it was an enjoyable read. I would recommend that you give it a whirl. It is a book that I do think about every so often. It just went in a lot of different directions, and towards the end, I remember it being kind of like far-fetched, and we were in such a real state of conversation about race and marriage and love, and then it just kind of took an interesting turn. However, I do remember enjoying the reading experience. Sing Unburied Sing is a book that I discussed here on BookTube, and it's by Jesmyn Ward. People love her. She showed up on this list like a couple of times, which was a rarity for authors. So that tells you that she deserves her flowers. I think she is one of the most prolific writers of our time, of this century. That doesn't mean that I loved Sing Unburied Sing. I was shocked at how much I did not enjoy that book, given the hype that it's received and how many readers who have similar reading taste to me were like, this book is one of my all-time favorites. It just didn't hit for me. I did enjoy the end. I felt like things as they unfolded and were revealed and wrapped up, it made sense. The magical realism started to make sense at that point. But it's a book that I could have done without. It was very grotesque in its descriptions. There was a lot of vomiting and gross stuff happening that really distracted me from the core of the story. It received 2 stars from your girl. But on a lighter note, we have probably one of my all-time favorite covers, Tomorrow Times 3 by Gabrielle Zevin. Oh my goodness. This book at the time, at the end of my reading, when I closed that book, it received 5 stars from me. And as I reflect upon it, it might go down to 4.25 or 4.5 stars. We have an interesting story that is centered around gaming, which I loved. I loved how this took gaming and had it at the center of relationships, friendships, romantic relationships, and business partners. And how the story progressed was very powerful. I have to say, what makes me drop it from the 5-star initial review that I gave it is the middle towards the latter quarter of the book was just really super long and drawn out, and I felt like unnecessary. I felt like this book could have been 100 or so pages less. Some people who are critics of this book have qualms with the characters, specifically the main female character. And if you know, you know. If you don't know, I encourage you to read the synopsis. I do recommend reading this book. It isn't a book that I would say take those criticisms and just decide not to read the book. If the book has piqued your interest, it's worth reading and forming your own opinion. I think that character was grating, and that was the whole point. Characters don't have to be likable for me to be invested in their story. So that's my piece, and I'll keep it moving from there. Oh, The Warmth of Other Suns. Oh my goodness gracious, you guys. This was an instant 5-star read. I think I listened to this on audiobook, and I believe I got 10 minutes in and already knew 5 stars from Denise LaRosa. Oh my goodness, this sweeping, well-researched narrative of the migration of African Americans from the South up to the North was riveting. These stories needed lifted up. They needed our listening ears or our eyes to read. And the way Isabel Wilkerson took such care and attention and detail to these narratives and had them interwoven to share the history of migration was just so well done that I'm swept away. I have yet to read Caste, but you can't convince me that Caste is better than The Warmth of Other Suns. I haven't even read Caste yet, but according to this list, she made the number 2 spot with The Warmth of Other Suns, not with Caste. So I think many agree with me as well. And then we have the last 2 books that I read that made it on the list are interesting because they're letters. Both of them are letters from fathers to sons, but 2 very different letters because these fathers offer 2 very different perspectives. They're 2 American fathers and 2 very different American fathers. We have Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates, and this was a book that was so talked about and everybody was all abuzz about it, and for good reason. This book really took the form of letters that Coates was writing to his son following the murder and trial of the death of Trayvon Martin. And he, being a Black man with a Black son, had much to say to his son following the outcome of this life-altering event. For those of us who don't even know Trayvon Martin, obviously this trial, this murder left an indelible mark upon this country and the individuals who make up the country. And so his letters are very deeply moving and sad and real and raw. And then we go from that, which received a 5-star from me, like 5 stars across the board. Because how can you not give a book 5 stars that was written so authentically, so genuinely, and with so much love? And then we go to Gilead by Marilynne Robinson, where we have a white father who is an older man who fathered his son at a much older age. And he knows that he's dying and that he will not live to see his son grow up. And he grew up in, I believe it was like in the Midwest and a small town. And so he's writing these letters coming from his truth and his authentic experiences of life. And it's very different than Ta-Nehisi Coates. However, what's universal to me is a father's love for his son, and also dealing with the fragility of mortality, the realness of mortality. Both of them are very deserving of being on this list. Both received 5 stars from yours truly. So, the New York Times asked its readers of this article, what books on this list are you going to add to your TBR? Some of them were already on my TBR. However, when I initially read the article and was tapping like want to read, I ended up with 17 books on the list. I have narrowed those down to 6 books that I want to read. Now, some of these books were already on my TBR, such as Citizen, Americana, and Pachinko. But 3 books were not on my radar, and I am super excited to dive into them at some point in the near future. We have Stay True and On Beauty by Zadie Smith. I have yet to read a Zadie Smith book, and people are surprised because they all say, the people that I talk to about Zadie Smith, they assume that I've read her books, or at least one of them, because they say her books seem to be my vibe. We shall see. And then we have Jesmyn Ward's book, Men We Reaped. And I've read at this point Let Us Descend and Sing Unburied. Sing from Jesmyn Ward. I enjoyed Let Us Descend. I enjoyed it way more than I did Sing Unburied. Sing, and I gave it 4 stars. So I feel like this book, however, is going to be a 5-star read. I just feel it in my bones. It's memoir-esque. And the way she writes so lyrically, I can only imagine what a reading experience this is going to be for your girls. So I'm super excited. I'm curious, what books have you read from this list? What books are on your TBR thanks to this list? Hop over in those comments and let your girl know. And until next time, happy reading. Bye.